Hello, my name is Melanie and today I will discuss roommates. When looking for a roommate, you first want to decide how this will benefit you. Perhaps this is the first time you are moving out of your parents' house and this is the only way you'll be able to do so financially. Or maybe you have already moved out and have realized that living out on your own is not all that it was made up to be. Perhaps you're starting to feel a little lonely or even starting to feel like you're drowning in some of those bills. Regardless of the reason, here are a few steps to get you started on this new search for a roommate. The first step is to plan ahead. You don't want to rush into anything. The last thing you want to do is settle for the first apartment that comes along or the first roommate that comes along. You want to have a list of a few apartments that may be financially feasible for both you and your roommate. You also want to pick a few people that you think will be trustworthy for these arrangements. Once you have chosen the person that you are committed to living with, get to know that person. Get to know what they like, what they dislike, get to know what their schedule is, if they like to watch a lot of TV, if maybe they like to have people over, and start setting up some boundaries for you and that person. That way there's a lot less conflict as you move in together. The next step is to lay all the cards down on the table for that person. You want to let that person know what values are important to you. Perhaps you don't like having people over after a certain time of the day, or maybe you like to have certain alone time where you like it to be quiet, that way you can study. The next step would be to talk finances. You want for both of you to be able to afford this living situation. Most of the time people will split the cost of rent, utilities, groceries, and maybe even furniture. So you want to know that you both are able to pay your side of the bill. The last thing you want is for one person to have to carry the financial burden of the other, because that creates a lot of friction and you don't want that in a living situation. If this is a person that was maybe recommended to you by a friend or a family member, the next step would be to look into getting a credit check of that person. That is probably the only way that you'll be able to know exactly what their financial situation is. Although it does seem a little harsh, it gives you insight into that person on a more personal financial level. The next step is to find a place that works for you both. You want to have a place that has enough bedroom space and enough living area. Depending on you and your roommate's preferences, you may want to have a smaller living area with bigger bedrooms. That way when you guys are done hanging out with each other, you can each split into your own separate bedrooms and have enough space for you to be able to hang out. Other people may prefer a bigger living area and smaller rooms because they like interacting with their roommate more often and maybe even like to have mutual friends over. So you have to discuss that with your roommate, that way you know what works best for you both. The next step is deciding how you're going to pay for furniture. Some places already come equipped with furniture, and so you don't really have to worry about that. But other places you may need a washer, a dryer, a fridge, maybe even a stove or a couch, and you want to decide how you guys are going to split the payments for that furniture. If you're not going to split the payments and you're each going to bring in your own furniture, you want to decide how that furniture is going to be split when you guys decide to move out, if you guys decide to move out. The next step is to become familiar with your resources. You want to know where you are located and what resources are located around you. Often when you move into a new town, you're not really sure where the nearest gas station is, where the nearest grocery store is, where the nearest takeout place is, and you want to get familiar with those places. That way you feel comfortable living where you are. Another step would be to place terms in writing. There are sometimes little things like splitting furniture or other things that we verbally agree on that we don't always go through with. So putting these terms in writing makes it official. That way if there's ever a legal problem, you can have these documents in order to defend yourself. One thing to be aware of is moving in with friends. While you may get along in a friendship situation, like going out or going to school together, this doesn't mean that you're gonna get along living together on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes we find quirks that we hadn't noticed in that person before when we're living together. So you don't want to crush a friendship with that. I hope these tips helped you guys kind of decide how to find a roommate if you're looking for a roommate. Thank you.